In the last 4 years, I've sold over 600 properties online, all vacant land. And in the process, I've made collectively millions of dollars doing it. And this is the exact land investing strategy that we teach inside of our community, Leah. But here's the thing. What if you want to invest in land without running a true land flipping business? Well, you're in luck, because in this video, we're going to address just that. You see, I'm going to reveal 8 hidden passive income opportunities that can come from owning raw land. And really hardly anyone's talking about these. And one of the last income opportunities that we're going to share here in this video is frankly so profitable and so bizarre, I was shocked. But you'll have to stick around to the very end to see it. You see, the truth is vacant land is one of the most underrated asset classes in the world. And that's why big names like Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, and other billionaires have been gobbling up vacant land. Now, they're not doing it for passive income reasons, but they're doing it because it's one of the sturdiest asset classes out there. Let me share some of those reasons as to why land is such a powerful investing. 1, it's a true finite resource. You see, something really interesting happens with other, in quotes, finite resources. When we run out of oil and the reserves are getting low, the price goes up. And when the price goes up, people go and find more oil because now there's enough margin to justify it. You see the same thing that happens with gold, with silver, and that's why land and Bitcoin are one of the only true finite resources out there. The supply is quite literally capped. Now, sure, you can subdivide land, but only within reason. Eventually, you just run out of land. And the second reason is that typically houses actually depreciate over time. It's the land that they sit on that appreciates. And this is where a lot of the value comes from when you actually sell a house. Let's say you've owned the house for 10 years. The house has actually depreciated in that time, but the land has gone up. Number 3 is it's actually really easy to acquire vacant land and acquire it with huge discounts. I'm talking like 30 to 50 cents on the dollar. Now, in our business, we do this by going direct to owner and doing off-market marketing. A weird way to phrase it. But you can still unlock massive discounts by finding deals on market. And the reason being is that 1, most realtors don't know how to sell it. Most owners don't want to go through the pain of selling it. And it's a very illiquid asset in most cases. Very different than houses. Everyone wants a house. And there's only so many of them out there. And in the same vein, point number 4 is that there's really little to no competition. You see, most real estate investors haven't caught on to the fact that vacant land is a great asset to flip and a great asset to invest in. Number 5 is that there's frankly just low to almost no holding costs. You've got property taxes, which are typically pretty low, especially if you're zoned ag. Maybe it's in an HOA or a POA and you've got some holding costs there, but that's pretty much it. And one of my favorite reasons as to why I love vacant land is it's got multiple use cases, which means it's got multiple exit strategies. I could buy one piece of land and have a multitude of different ways to add value to it or resell it or make money from it. It's not always the case with houses. And number 7 is that most owners are much more open to owner financing. That's where they actually finance it for you and they act like the bank. In fact, I just recently did a deal in Texas where this property was on market and I bought it with 20% down, 7% interest, 20-year amortization, 5-year balloon. Those would be really hard terms for me to get from a bank right now. But I don't need to tell you all this. I'm not sitting alone in my office filming here to try to convince you to buy land. No, I'm sitting here alone on a Tuesday to show exactly how you can make your land cash flow. And that's the rub with land. As is, it's an amazing asset. You typically only see returns through appreciation and the resale of the property. Where a house could pay you monthly and you could get a little bit of cash flow, for most of us, that's not going to happen with land. You buy it, you hold it, it appreciates, and you resell it. But today, that all changes. You can have your vacant land cake and eat it too. Appreciation and cash flow. Oh, and just a side note, this isn't one of those annoying ass theoretical YouTube videos. Everything I'm listing here in terms of passive income opportunities come from people in my network. I didn't just make this up or just do a Google search. Now, I haven't done all these things myself, but I'm a few layers removed from someone that has. In fact, that's actually where I've generated a lot of these different examples. All right, enough yapping, let's get to it. Number 1 passive income opportunity for land is glamping or camping rentals. And really, this is actually more bare bones camping than glamping. Because what we're talking about here today is how can we take a piece of land, make the most minimal improvements to it and cash flow while still owning it. You see, I could go and owner finance a property and get monthly income, but at some point that cash flow ends. This strategy works really well when you've got rural recreational land outside of city limits with mild to almost no zoning requirements. And hopefully you're within proximity to some kind of natural place that someone would want to go and visit. So I'm going to give you an example. One of my very first members was a gentleman named Levi. This was before I even had Leah. We used to just meet up at coffee shops and I would just kind of show him the land game. Levi, if you're watching this, I hope you're doing well, man. Before him and I connected, one of his very first deals was a property right outside of Joshua Tree. It was just a little north of Joshua Tree. It was listed on market market and he bought it for, I think, about $5,000. Now, at the time, there probably wasn't that much equity in it, right? He got a good deal, not a great deal. Probably could have turned around and sold it for $6,500 or $7,500. But what he thought was, well, Joshua Tree is going to continue appreciating. This was right before COVID. Things were starting to boom out there. He says, how could I own this land and still get paid for it? So he puts this bare bone piece of land up on Hip Camp. I think he put one little fire pit on it, and he was cash flowing about $500 to $1,000 a month in profit from a deal that he bought for $5,000 on market. And if you use the strategies that we talked about inside Leah, you probably could have bought that deal off market for $2,000 or $2,500. That means you get fully paid back on the property in less than a year. And that cash flow never disappears. And I think that there is a rise with millennials who want to go and experience cool Airbnbs or cool glamping sites or cool camping sites. And so sure, you could make some improvements, put a little teepee on it, or as Levi showed us, you could just go and rent the thing out as is. And in fact, on a different occasion, I also went to Joshua Tree. I stayed on this 40-acre property. I paid $50 a night to stay on a vacant piece of land that was 40 acres. Now, this option is not necessarily entirely passive, but it is a great strategy. You might have to do some simple coordination through Hip Camp on when people go and stay there, make sure that they don't do anything crazy on it. But as Levi told me, it was a few hours a month that he put toward that. So what if you repeated that strategy and had 100 properties just like it and were making $50,000 a month? I think it's totally possible. And the cool thing is, this is essentially what's called a covered land play, where you're buying for the appreciation, but if you can get cash flow in between, you can pay down those holding costs and make some money and make all the money when you sell it. This is actually what a lot of people do with car washes or things like that. The car wash cash flows a little bit, but the real value is being able to hold into the land and one day sell it for a huge premium. Number 2 is leasing land to hunters. You see, most of the deals that we do in our land flipping operation are rural properties, 5 acres to a couple hundred acres. And we're usually 3 to 5 hours outside of any kind of city. Sometimes we're close to towns, but typically still pretty far away. And most of that land is great hunting land. And hunting leases can go for $10 to $50 per acre. That's pretty crazy. And depending on what you're hunting, the hunting season only lasts for a certain amount of time. So perhaps you could Hip Camp at the off season, do a hunting lease in the on season, and have multiple income opportunities from one property. Now, the hunter lease pretty much takes no work on your part. You have to find the person that wants to lease it, and that's pretty much it. Since we're talking about leasing, let's talk about leasing to farmers. A little weird fact that a lot of people don't know is most farmers don't own the land. They actually lease it from a landowner and they farm it. And so that means if you're in an area that's fruitful, like where I grew up in the Salinas Valley, you can have a big old honking piece of land and lease it out to a farm. Now, obviously, food is the backbone of this country and any country, and so there's a real premium to leasing farmland. Non-irrigated farmland is going to trade for about $150 per acre for a lease, and irrigated farmland is going to trade for about $230 an acre. And in fact, just in the last year, it's gone up almost 5% in terms of the lease rates. I think it's why a lot of these billionaires are buying land, is because if there is a food shortage or food scarcity, it's a huge asset to own farmland. But we don't really want to farm it, right? We want the passive income. So it's a great option. All right, number 4 is hosting weddings and events on your piece of land. Now, I didn't know this person directly. I actually read this in a newspaper 5 years ago. There was a lady that got slapped with a fine from Joshua Tree. Apparently, we love that area. She was renting out her property for about $10,000 a weekend for weddings, and allegedly she was inside city limits and didn't have permits or something. I think she didn't have insurance or a business license. There was something that she was doing with shady. But $10,000 a weekend. Now, she did add some things to it. They had a little veranda, some little additions. But we're talking about very minimal capital improvements. That's a strategy that could easily make you 6 figures plus a year. In fact, my dad bought a piece of land with a little house on it up in Oregon, right outside of Eugene. And they're thinking about doing exactly that. Leasing it out for team retreats or whatever, yoga retreats or weddings, on and on and on again. Now, the cool thing about weddings is people will pay a huge premium for weddings. Presumably, it's the most important day of their life, and you can take advantage of that. Number 5 is so weird. Building a truck stop on your property. I know that sounds crazy, but I know of a guy who knows a guy who knows a guy. He's inside of our community. It's a friend of a friend. And allegedly, he's making about $30,000 to $50,000 a month by doing these truck stop leases. Now, I don't think they have gas stations and all the bells and whistles on it. They're pretty minor. They're usually in very rural areas where truck drivers don't have a lot of options. So they pull off for the night, park their truck on it. Now, with this, it's going to be very important that you source land that has the right attributes. You got to be in an area where there's a lot of demand for that. You got to be in an area where the zoning allows for that. And you've got to be in an area where you're within close proximity to major trucking interstates. All right, number 6 is one of those old school land strategies, and that is leasing out your property for grazing. Now, I'm not going to lie, it's not the most profitable strategy out there, but you can expect about $5 to $10 per acre for grazing land. Now, that's pretty damn hands-off. Now, if you're doing that, you should be able to apply for an ag exemption. And what that's going to do is really bring down your annual taxes to make your holding cost pretty close to zero. I've seen properties that are multiple hundreds of acres where the owner's paying $100 to $200 a year for taxes. Now, if they didn't have that exemption, it would be potentially $10,000 plus. Now, I know a lot of these counties are starting to wind some of this back in places like Texas because so many people have taken advantage of it, but it is an option. And stick around for the very end, guys, and I'm going to share with you what strategy I would personally do with my land. Number 6 is a solar energy lease. Now, to be honest, I thought this would be way more profitable. And again, I know a friend of a friend who did do this for both solar and wind turbine. And I figured this guy's probably raking it in. In fact, they're only leasing for about 25 cents to $1 per acre. Now, sure, you're doing some good for the planet, but I think I'm gonna go and position my property for a different strategy. And maybe there's some kickbacks that happen in the end or something, but I was shocked at how low that was. Number 7 is actually one of my favorite strategies, and that's off-road tourism. So I was just out in Lake Havasu a couple weekends ago, and I rented this ATV razor thing. And we were driving out on these properties, and some of them you'd have to go and pay. And yeah, they might have had some jumps and some kickers and some berms, but we're talking about packing and moving some dirt. Actually, where I grew up, there's a place in Hollister, California that did just this for dirt bikes, and they made a killing. I think you could expect about $25 to $100 per day per person. And that's gonna be for them to ride dirt bikes or ATVs or things like that. And if you've got cool features on your property, you could actually turn it into a tourist attraction. Let's imagine you've got a waterfall with a swimming hole. Hey, go ride your ATVs, get out there, go swimming, kind of a cool thing. And I've actually done this a lot in foreign countries where people will actually have private land that they rent out for going on hikes or tourist attractions, and you actually have to go and pay to get on the land. When I was in Colombia, I did just this to go whitewater rafting. We had to cut through private property, so we paid them to get access to the river. All right, here's the big kahuna, the big nugget I promised, number 8. I like to call this the big fortuna, the big tuna, the big kahuna, the big cheddar. Okay, I'll shut up. With this strategy, you can make $50 to $250 per acre of leased land. That's hands down the best return we've seen here, and that is for wind energy leases. Now, frankly, I don't really know why the value is so radically different. From what I've heard, obviously the wind turbines are eyesores, and I think they rust, and sometimes they leave them there. I don't really know what that entails entirely, but I'll tell you that is kicking the ass on solar energy in terms of leases. Now, a lot of people have feelings about wind turbines. I'll leave that up to you, but good Lord, 50 to 200 bucks per acre is crazy. So as promised, I'll share with you which one I would do, and it has to be number 1, the camping rentals. Because in that case, I have control on how much I make by where I marketed it at, how good my marketing is, how competitive my prices are, what kind of features I add to the land. In fact, there's so many stories out there, people that are making 20, 30, 40 grand a month by putting teepees on their properties and renting them out. So very little capital expenditure for potentially big returns. And I like this strategy because you are in control of it. There's not so much I can do with a lease. There's kind of market value, and there's not much that goes beyond that. So if it were me, number 1 would be my pick. And that's a wrap, guys. Hopefully I've wet your palate, wet your beak on how you can start investing in raw land and making passive income. And I use that word passive delicately, asterisked. Here's the truth though. A lot of these strategies can be stacked on top of one another for multiple streams of income. And 2, there's actually substantially more passive income opportunities for land out there. We just didn't have the time to cover them here today. And if this video gets enough love, I'll drop part deuce. And last but not least, guys, if you want to learn how myself and hundreds of others inside of our community are building 6- and 7-figure land investing businesses, and no, we don't do this. We actually go and buy and flip and resell land. Then you need to head on over to landinvestor.co/apply. You'll find that link down below as well. Here you'll have an opportunity to schedule a free 6-figure land investing strategy call with my team and I. On this call, we'll break down our land flipping strategy from A to Z. And if we're a good fit for each other, we'll extend the olive branch and invite you to join the community. Or alternatively, if you don't want to, take the strategies, run with them. But here's the thing. We only have 15 spots for new members every month. The time of this recording, we pretty much filled up all of those spots. And that's how it's been going month after month. So you may need to get on the wait list for the next month. And the reason that we do this is because everything we do inside of Leah is incredibly high touch. We don't sell information, we sell outcomes. All right, guys, cheers. Take care of yourself. Go buy some land. Enjoy your life. I'll see you guys in the next video.